You break, you buy. You break it, you buy it. 10% off for cousins, 20% off for nephews and nieces. Mrs. Kim is a wonderful character that Amy created. She had hard times immigrating from Korea to Stars Hollow. And as the watchers of Gilmore Girls knows, that her husband is gone a lot. So she pretty much had to raise Lane by herself and run a business. So she's a very warm, loving character that goes out of her way to be strict with Lane for Lane's own benefit, so that her life will be better in this new country than Mrs. Kim had it. So it all comes from love. In my mind, Mr. Kim was a rock star. He was like John Cho, you know? So on the reboot, when they had my husband, I was like, no! Although he's a very sweet man, but in my mind, through those 7 years, Mr. Kim was this excellent musician, rock and roller, and the most good-looking guy on the planet, in my mind. When I went in to audition for the Gilmore Girls, I went in with a Korean accent. I said, no daddy, no sugar, no wheat. And Amy Palladino goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing a Korean accent. She goes, no, don't do that. I said, wow, how refreshing. Because it's, I think, based on a real character. So she did say, though, that Mrs. Kim was very military, very strict. So that's where the cadence of Mrs. Kim came from, in that audition room with Amy and Dan and everybody.
Mom!
Lane?
Mom?
Lane?
Mom, where are you?
Lane, where are you?
Back here.
Over here. We shot the pilot for the Gilmore Girls in Toronto, Canada, which was a big treat. And when I first went into Kim's Antiques, I was taken aback because there were chairs everywhere. You couldn't hardly move. I said, how are they going to shoot in here? And that's where I think in the pilot we did Marco Polo, because we had to, because there was no line of sight. And that's where Mrs. Kim first said, boys don't like funny girls.
So, how was school? None of the girls get pregnant, drop out?
Nothing we know of. Though come to think of it, Joanna Posner was glowing a little.
What?
Nothing, Mama. She's just kidding.
Boys don't like funny girls.
Noted.
And that is Mrs. Kim in a nutshell. Not funny, but kind of funny. I am so grateful to have done Mrs. Kim in the Gilmore Girls, because I can count on one hand the number of Asian American characters that have a well-rounded home life in one hand at that point. And this was 7 years of watching Lane from high school to her first date to marriage and children. As far as favorite moments, when Lane got married, oh my God, I was weeping.
Okay.
I'm going to wear earplugs tonight. The good ones that expand in your ear, so I won't be able to hear anything that might be going on out in the street at all hours of the night. And so it was really hard for me to walk down that aisle without Mr. Kim, as usual, and not just be this weeping mess. So I just had to suck it up and be Mrs. Kim. But, you know, after so many years of being her mom and living through so many important moments of her life, I couldn't help but be deeply moved at that moment, even with that speech about what she had to do on her wedding night.
Going to have to do it with this boy, Lane. You're just going to have to do it. Hopefully, if you're lucky like me, you'll only have to do it once.
One of my favorite moments in the Gilmore Girls was when, I'm going to cry, but I'm going to try not to cry, was when I found that Lane had been lying to me, and she hid all this stuff under a floorboard.
Is this all?
And I kicked her out of the house. And that was the hardest thing to do because I loved her so much, but I knew that if I let this go, it would be bad for her character.
Children do not make the rules. You may move out and live like that somewhere else.
So that was one of the hardest things to do and one of the most fulfilling because I did it, I hurt myself because I loved her so much. I was so lucky to have Keiko Agena play Lane Kim because she is just a fantastic actress. And we didn't really have to work because she was so present and all I had to do was bounce off of her and the connection was just natural. What I love about the Gilmore Girls is that here we are, 20 years later. I was walking down the streets of Manhattan and somebody stopped me and her husband broke down crying and we hugged and we took selfies because Gilmore Girls and Mrs. Kim had that much of an effect on her. And it makes me proud to be part of that Gilmore Girls love and affection that continues today. Gilmore Girls was a show that was based on love. There was conflict, there was disagreements, but it was all based on love and mutual respect. And I think that our audiences appreciate that and cling to it. Because especially now, when you watch a show like Gilmore Girls, it makes you feel warm inside and happy. And you look around at your family and your friends and you appreciate them just a little bit more because the show reminds you of what's important in life. Right now, Mrs. Kim is taking care of her twin grandboys. And she is just as strict on them, but they have started a band. And Mrs. Kim is the lead singer. Watch out for the music video.